Okay, so hi, I'm Jakub, and for the past few weeks, I have been working on our new Sylius admin panel for Sylius 2.0. And I'm core team member at Sylius. I'm technical content creator, and I do love connecting backend and frontend worlds. So every journey begins with a single step. But before we embark on our journey, we need to do a quick intro to Sylius template events to make sure we are all on the same level. So Sylius template events is a pretty easy concept packed into Sylius UI bundle, and it's a simple Sylius template event Twig function which takes up to 2 parameters. The first parameter is a string, which is a event name, and it might be an array of strings, which can be a multiple event names. The second parameter is context, which is a bag of data. Technically, it's a Twig hash. So we have some key, we have some value, and we pass this data along with our event. Here's an example where we have some app.main event and app.fallback event. What's not important, this order of these two events is important, but we'll talk about it for a while. Also, we have our context with some key and some value. And basically, we can tell it does nothing. Like we don't need an additional configuration. It does nothing. It does not throw an exception. Emptiness. So to make it working, we need a YAM configuration. And here's an example configuration for YAM, where we see we have a configuration for app.main event and app.fallback event. And as I told you before, it's important, the order is important here. Let's back for Elizabeth. As we see, well, we don't see. Okay, so the event name, which is earlier, is overriding or it's merged with the event, which is later. So if we look at this configuration, you might see we have a block with the same name, and template from the app.main event block will override the one from the app.fallback event. So we have some way of override what we do in Sylius. So let's go. But we need an experimental object, and our experimental object will be the orders show page. And we need to have some starting point. And our starting point, we have to find it. And as order is a resource, we know that we need to go to the root configuration and find a template we are rendering. And if we look at this template, we may notice it's pretty simple. We have some extend directive, some blocks, some variable, but there's no HTML. So where is this magic HTML we have here? We'll have to have a way to find it. And there are 2 ways in Sylius. The first one is browser DevTools, and the second one is YAM config. But let's take a look at the first one, at the second one. In the YAM config, we can copy the name of the event, we can paste it, and we can find this configuration and see what blocks are rendered. Pretty cool. And of course, as everything in the world, it has pros and cons. And the first pros is it's easy to find an event. Like you take an event name, you paste it, you find it. Also, the indentation or the way how YAM configs are formatted makes it easy to find what we want, what blocks are rendered. However, we don't see what events are rendered inside the blocks. Like when we have an event, we have a block, but these blocks can render next events. It's invisible for us from the YAM config level. So we have to do something with it. And there is a problem, especially in Sylius. We have only single file where we configure all events. And long file equals jumping. And there is a thing I called rabbit cycle, where we have a template, we jump to the yum config, and once we finish the yum config, we jump back to the next template. And it's not a good thing. And there are browser tools. It's also a pretty simple thing. When we render some event or some block, we add in the debug mode some data like begin event HTML comment, the same thing for the block, and there are for both ending comments like end block and end event. So it's pretty easy to find an event or a block. You copy the name and you paste it in the browser DevTools search, and you got it. You have where is the start and the end dev comment. It's also pretty easy to find descendant elements, like if we see some begin event block, and we see after it there is no end event HTML comment. Everything between these two HTML comments is rendered within this one event. So it's pretty easy. However, complex event blocks decrease readability. Like we have the same level of indentation. And due to this fact, when we have multiple begin and end blocks, it might become hard to find what is rendered by what. We have some kind of fog that we don't see where some block starts and where it ends. And also there's a rabbit cycle. Template to the browser. Once we end in the browser, we are back to the template. And here I identified the problem number one with template events. Looking for events or blocks and relations between them, which renders another, is pretty hard. And it was me when I started thinking how make it easier to work with it. And I guess I have found a solution. My first thought is let's take the event name and let's structure the templates directory with using this name. And here's our experimental object number 2. It's some event. And I split it into some parts. The first part is a prefix. The only use of this prefix is to diversify events between different bundles or between shop, between shop and admin panel. The next one is a resource in case of Sylius. But for example, it might be not a resource. Like we have a dashboard in Sylius, and when I created event for dashboard, I put here a dashboard, which is not a resource. Next we have an operation, which is pretty good for CRUDs, as we have index, show, update, create. So we diversify events between different pages. Next we have some HTML component or part of the web, of our page, like header. And the last one, in my opinion, the most important, is a template. And the last element of this long event name is an information what is a file name we are looking for. And based on everything what I told you, we have an exact path to the template in which we are throwing this event. So when we see this concrete event, we know it's thrown in this path. And from this tree on the left, which is pretty flat, we achieved the tree on the right, which is more complex. And it's also, is of course a trade-off. Like everything is software programming, we have trade-offs. And this trade-off is in really long event names. We'll have a really high level of nesting of directories. But from my experience from the past few weeks, it's not a big deal, at least in Sylius. Like we can swing. Oh, one more thing. Here's a underscore customer HTML file. And in the same directory, we have a customer directory. And it's not an accident. It's make on mind. Like everything which we see in this directory with the same name, what the file Twig file template is a block rendered within this event. So we know if we find some block on, let's say in our DevTools, and we find it here in our templates directory, we know that everything what happens and exists in this directory customer with the same name is what is rendered inside. And now, in my opinion, it's easier to predict where to look for an event and its blocks. I find an event name, I go to the directory, I see a directory with the same name what the Twig file, and boom, we have. And one problem we solved for now. But we need to go deeper. And let's take a look at our experimental object number 1. Let's back to it. And here is it, a part of this experimental object. It's orders data. Like we have some information like when we created an order, what is a state. And it's pretty possible that we might want to add something here or here. And spoiler, it's not easy in Sylius. When we look at the file, it's how look this part of page inside the orange box. Many divs, and to add our information we wanted, we need to add something here or here. So the only way is to copy this file and override it. And it's not a good thing, as we as Sylius might need to add something new. And you won't have this new thing because you overrided the template. And here I identified the problem number 2, bloated templates. We have too many information, too many elements inside our Twig files. And I created rule of thumb. If a piece of HTML can be moved in an X or Y axis and still make sense, it's a candidate, and it's important, it's a candidate for an event block. But let's see an example. Here is our experimental object. Here is our header. And here's an order number, which is basically title. Below we have an information I showed you before. And there might be a case we want to swap them. And it's correct. Some shops might want to swap these two elements. So we have 2 candidates for event blocks. Let's go deeper. We have order creation date and state. Or we might add something new. It's totally legal. And we might want to swap these 2 blocks. So we have next candidate for event block. Thanks to it, when we add something, thanks to YAML config, we might want to put it anywhere, from any level. And you won't override what Sylius created. And if we, again, add something as Sylius, you will also get it here. Maybe, we consolidate in position in the priority, but you will have this information and you will be able to adjust it. On the right, on the same our experimental object number 1, we have a box with a client's data. And we have a box with the payments. Again, we can write it as one HTML Twig file. Just one after one. But also, we can use event blocks. We can create 2 event blocks, one for customer box or whatever we called it, and another one for payments. And we can go deeper. We have an email, customer's email, and customer's phone. And this data also can be swapped. And we can add something new, like we add some customer group or anything, thanks to event blocks with single small HTML template. and with small YAML configuration, we can add something new. But we can't swing too far. And this is exactly what I did, and that's why I created this slide. In some cases, we just want to wrap something inside a div. Like, we have some form, and I needed to add a div with class row, because I wanted to have 2 columns in this form. And I started with this simple form start, form end, and we are throwing some event with a form to render the fields. And here's an event I created. Like, I added div with class row, and I throw another event to allow render the fields, and it created a problem. The problem was I have a longer event name, which is not exactly necessary. And I identified problem number 3, which is 2 granular event blocks are bad, and I provided solution involved twig blocks. I took the old some form, and I put block form above the form start, and another block form content inside the form. Now I can extend this template, and I can override only the part I want. And to make it compatible with everything what exists already, I'm just calling parent. So we can tell I do some kind of decorating this template without touching what's inside. And here's really simple configuration. We have 5 lines where we change the template we render from the original one to our decorated one. And that's me, because I wanted to build a whole new layout only with Twig blocks. And my friends convinced me to not using it. And this was exactly me, when I smuggled Twig blocks along with Twig events. And going deeper. While creating blocks, I wanted to let developers configure them. And let's visualize how it works now. Here we have some configs, like we have context configuration, which we get root name index to probably do some, let's say, cancel action. You click the button, you are redirected back to the index. Also, we configure where the form, what is a form action. And everything, it's not related example, it's from another root. We do it by vars keyword in the configuration, and we pass all these data like subheader, index icon. In the context of the previous template, it would be some root, etc. And it's not easy to do, like to add or remove something or change, you have to copy the whole root and change it. And I've provided a solution. The solution is to move the configuration from the root level to the block level, like this. I use the already existing concept of context to pass some data from the configuration to the template. In this example, we define whether we want to render REST form or not. And here's how I use it. We have form and Twig function when we took the value of the context render REST from the context, and we use it as a value. We also use it to render some blocks, like some buttons, cancel or primary. And once I've done the hard part, like it was really hard, few weeks spent on digging in it, I started to do some cleanups. And I found the events.yaml file we are using in Sylius to define our routes is pretty heavy, but not in terms of kilobytes, but more in terms of lines. And how it's look like? When we notice, it's almost 1,400 lines. And now you imagine you need to jump in this file to find next block and next block, back to the template, you are doing the rabbit cycle. Not a good idea. So problem number 5. It's too big, and to work an ergonomic with it. And solution, the old good divide and conquer. So I took the events.yaml file, and I started splitting it. I created dashboard.yaml for our dashboard, product.yaml for our product, etc. You know, product variant, and whatever we have in Sylius. And started looking like this. It's pretty cool. From over 1,000 of lines, we have not more than 100. And I added some comments to indicate that if you want to edit something in the show page, here's a whole section of things for the show page, update, etc. And I said it is too little. I want to have a way cleaner way to look for things. And I started dividing more granularly. So product.yaml has been split into show.yaml, create.yaml, and update.yaml. Cool. Also, I packed it into its own product directory. So now, when I'm on show page of the product, I know if I want to look what guys from Sylius created here, what they decided to put. I just go to the Sylius admin, resources will simplify, of course, this procedure with new bundle configuration. But for now, it's resources, config, there are template events, product, show. And I have only things what are interesting me. I don't have any additional things which might create some kind of fog. And there is one more thing, I always wanted to say it. We are killing Sylius template events. But not exactly. We are creating Sylius Twig Events. It's a new thing created and written from scratch and based on our current templates event mechanism. So why we did it? They are becoming Sylius agnostic. As Symfony developer, once we release it, you can use everything what I showed you without Sylius. It's not blocked to evolve this package by Sylius release cycle. It will be compatible with Symfony 5.4 and newer. Also, we improved debug tools. If you ever checked debug tools in the Twig, you have a nice call graph. What template has been rendered for by what? And we'll see a nice call graph from now, where we see this event has rendered these blocks, but these blocks rendered another event. So it will be easier than using debug tools or YAML config. Also, we will have new features like support for Twig or live components. Currently, to use it in Sylius, you need to create additional intermediate template just to render the controller or the Twig component you want. But we'll add, you just provide the component name, and it's rendered without additional Twig file. Also, we'll provide new documentation, and it will be for both, for Sylius, how to work with template events in Sylius, but also there will be an Sylius agnostic documentation. And more, like really many more. And we're also reactivating Sylius Stack initiative. Some of you might not never heard about it, but it's a set of e-commerce agnostic packages, increasing developer experience and allowing to make things faster. And the first package will be Twig Events, but at the release day of this package, probably there will be 2 more packages, at least 2 more packages. But if you want to know what these packages will be, I can only give you a hint to go to Lake's presentation at 12. And stay tuned for more. Thank you for your attention. I hope you will like to work with new Twig events.